This is the voice acting for video games panel. So hopefully you all are in the right place. If we would like to just maybe introduce ourselves and a little of what we've done.
Hi, I'm Kaylee McKee. You might know me from Guilty Gear as Testament. I'm Varden Dawngrasp in Blizzard's Hearthstone. I'm in a lot of MOBAs. I'm in Smite. I do just a whole slew of video games. So hi.
Hello.
Hi guys, I'm Jason Charles Miller. I'm in a lot of MMORPGs and some fighting games. I'm in World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Halo Infinite, Lost Ark, Smite, etc., etc. I realized I was looking at that list of top 10 MMORPGs, and I'm in 6 out of 10, so that's not too bad. So that's it.
Hi, I'm Kira. I played Jolene in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but in terms of video games, I'm 2B in Nier Automata. I've also worked on a lot of fighting games like Soul Calibur, Street Fighter. I'm Kuki Shinobu in Genshin Impact. I'm also a Twitch streamer for Genshin Impact. I am in River City Girls, Persona 5 Strikers, and a whole lot of other stuff. So this panel is mostly going to be a Q&A, so if you have a question, if you can raise your hand, and if ideally if you can kind of stand up and project, then that will help everyone in the room to be able to hear you. Who wants to call on somebody?
I believe right up front raise their hand first.
I have a question for Kira. What age did you first start doing voice acting?
I was 16 when I first started, but I always say that age is just, it doesn't really matter. There are people who get into it at all ages. There's a lot of people on the server I admin who are like, oh, I worry that I'm going to be left behind because I didn't start when I was a kid or a teenager or in my 20s or whatever. I was like, it doesn't matter, if you're in your 50s, you can still start. It's not like there's a time limit on it.
Next, I think you were the second originally. Uh-huh.
So this is a question about video game voice acting just in general. If your agency isn't sending you very many, should you apply to more agencies? I just don't really know how to get voice acting roles.
So if you are at an agency in a certain market like LA or New York, if you are going to start shopping at other agencies, that's probably you're looking at leaving your current one because they don't like you having, I'm at CESD. If I signed on with Atlas, they'd probably kick me to the curb because they want to work with you and for you to be they are yours and you are theirs. If you have an agent in other markets like Seattle or Texas, oftentimes they can be okay with that. But if they are not giving you a lot of video game sides, that's something to have a meeting with them about, have dinner, talk about your goals and your desires and what markets you want to move into. And if they think, oh, well, I'm not sending you very many because I don't think you're ready for combat shouts and all of that stuff because you haven't worked on that very much, then at least they've told you and you can say, okay, who should I go to? Do you have any classes that you recommend for me to improve that skill set? Let's work together so I can move here. Because you succeeding in what you want to do is only ever going to also benefit them.
If I may add to that as well, I usually think the best thing to do is try to see if things can improve at your current agency before looking for a new one. A lot of times agencies will have a certain contract period, so maybe you sign with them for 1 year or 18 months or 6 months or something. If you are only with them for a few months, then usually you can get out of it, but I would say just see if you can have a meeting with your agents and be like, hey, here are the things that I want to read for. What do I need to do to be competitive, or is there anything that I can do to get these sides? I literally told my agents when I signed on, I want to read for Final Fantasy and Genshin Impact. So, it's It can be hard. The other thing too is I'm not sure where you're based, but I know most of the video games are done in LA. There's some things in Dallas, some things in New York, and then there's a few projects that are still open to doing remote, so you can be anywhere if you have like a good setup or can go to a local studio. But because so many places want you to be in LA, then you also may not be seeing sides for the games that say LA talent only. Now, if you are willing to travel at your own cost, I mean, obviously it should be something that's worth it, maybe like a union project or something where you're gonna get a lot of hours. You could let your agents know and say, hey, I'm willing to travel on short notice and, and pay for my flights or whatever, so I am willing to submit for LA projects, in that regard.
Those are both great answers. So what I would say is, what the lockdown did prove is that a lot of companies are more open to remote recording, but they still are more open to remote recording with actors that they were already familiar with. And now that things have opened back up, I've heard from many production companies that they're dying to get people back into the studio because they want you on the same mic and the same preamp and the same engineer that records everyone, so that it's just easier on the production side. It's just practicality. So.
How about the Ganyu over there?
Hi, how do you train your voice to sustain something that's out of your natural range? Like if you have a medium pitch and you have to do a high pitch for a character, do you have tips on how to do that without kind of fading back into your natural voice?
Practice is the biggest thing, and then making sure that you are properly supporting your voice and using the right techniques and everything. Singing training is really helpful for that because it will just teach you about vocal placement and things like that. And you don't want to do something so much that it hurts. So work on expanding your range slowly, and just keep practicing, and also just making sure you're in the character's right mindset, because a lot of times you start with the acting, you start with the character, and the voice follows, is how I look at it. So, as humans, our voice change pitches. If anyone here is a cat parent, when we talk to our cats, we go into the cat baby voice. And, we're like, if we're talking to someone we don't like, we're like, hey, what's up? So, Kaylee's a great example of this. Like, your range is phenomenal. But I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, what I always tell people is if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. You have to have patience in trying to expand your range. I came in from a singing background, and then I think my first voice acting job, I was 28. So, but I've now I've had a great career in voice acting as well. So I think singing lessons are great because they really work on expanding your range. So besides just regular acting lessons, I would recommend singing lessons as well.
Yeah, what you have to remember is that all of this is muscles and physical stuff here. So it's all about slowly working it out, and slowly it will get stronger and better at what you're using it for. It's if you go and you're like, I want to get buff, and you go to the gym and you just wreck yourself and then are stuck in bed for a week, you're not doing anything that actually helped you. So you have to take it slow, just like you're doing a 10-minute workout and a 2-mile run, and then slowly keep going. And it's you just take care of yourself, be dedicated with it, and know how to do it right, because that's the other thing is you don't want to work out wrong and then hurt yourself in the long run. And past that, if it's something that is outside of your normal speaking range enough that you need breaks, but you're confident, you can do it, and it doesn't hurt to do it, but you're gonna need a break, you take breaks in the booth. Directors they know that you need that sometimes, and they will gladly give it to you. So it's just a labor of caring for your body and slowly working toward where you want to be. Ooh, we have lots more. I wish we had somebody to help us pick.
Yeah.
Oh,
James.
thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll go you in the back.
Both, right? So you read a character description, usually that you get an idea for what they are. They'll request accents or say no accents. And you take that and you say, can I do this character? And then if you can, you go in and you try it. Although sometimes if they request like a German accent or something like that, sometimes I will read an American accent read anyway, because that does get cast sometimes. Sometimes they say, oh, well, actually that sounds really good. And we didn't need it to be that, within reason, of course. If they're trying to cast it representatively, like this person grew up in this country and they have this accent and English is their second language, I wouldn't try to pull them away from that, because I would rather it go to somebody who can authentically portray that character. But otherwise, you kind of fill in the blanks from what you know, if you know you can do it. And what I do is I look at them and I say, if I were playing this game, what voice would I want to hear come out of it? And can I do that? And then I go from there.
For every audition that we get sent, every casting director, there's no universal like sheet that says how much background we have. Sometimes we get pages and pages of background on the character. Other times we get like 2 lines of background. So it's up to us to really place that voice. And I think that once you think about where the character's from, if we're given the space to create the voice ourselves, that often you'll hear it in your head and then you just go for it. You don't think about the accent anymore. You don't think about placing the voice just places itself.
Yeah, in terms of how much freedom you have with creating the character voice, I think it also depends if it's original media or something localized. So I work on a lot of localized media, so anime, games that were produced in other languages first. And in that case, sometimes they do want you to stay kind of close to the original voice. Not always, it just depends. But if they do give you a voice reference in the audition, then it can be very helpful. You don't have to try to match one-to-one, because again, the acting is most important. But for example, when I auditioned for Kuki Shinobu, they sent along a sample of her Chinese voice, which is the original language. And so I listened to that and I found it very helpful in kind of creating my voice for her to make sure that I was in the right ballpark.
Yeah, very true. Like when, if we're localizing a game, I would say 90% of the time, they will play us the original language actor first. And we're either given instruction, try to match this, or don't worry so much about this, but we want it to sound like that.
Yeah, sometimes they'll also, like, this is the other thing, I know it wasn't in your question, but I do want to bring it up because a lot of people don't realize this. It's very common if you're working especially on localized games to have to match timing. So sometimes they will play you ref for each line, and it's not even like you have to do exactly what the actor in the original language did, but they say it either has to match this within, you know, like a 1/10 of a second or half a second or whatever, or it can be as long as this, but it cannot go over. So getting like kind of an internal sense of timing, I know musicians are really good with this, I don't know if you can attest to that, but you know, just kind of, and it is something that comes with practice and a lot of on-the-job learning, so no one's gonna like hate you if you can't do it right off the bat, but it does help to be able to listen to an audio file and kind of rehearse what your English line is in your head to be like, okay, I know I need to speed it up or slow it down from what my rehearsal was.
Yeah, and a final thing for me to add is like, be explorative where you think you have a great idea that is maybe not the ref they gave you, but if it's a localization and they give you ref, do a take where you are pretty similar to the ref and while focusing on the acting, like Kira said. But if you have another idea, give it to them, because that's what I did with Testament, and they loved that and they cast that.
Yep.
Kira, you said you did 2 weeks in your opponent, right? Whenever you're reading these scripts to know what to say, what emotions were going through
So one thing that was challenging about playing 2B is that she is very reserved. I mean, literally one of her iconic lines is "emotions are prohibited." So it was like kind of that challenge of you need to have a character that sounds monotone as kind of her baseline, but without being flat, without being boring. So it was actually very challenging because I did not play characters like that a lot at the time. I would play characters who were very big and over the top and like Mean Girls and stuff like that. But with 2B, it was kind of like, okay, everything that you want to give to this line, it has to be much more restrained. But then she has moments, like she has moments where she really does allow herself to get emotional. And I think those are really powerful because I just put everything into that, you know?
Thank you.
And one thing that helps too, of course, is because I'm starting to do this myself as well. Like I'm starting to become a voice director, but the voice director will be there to guide you for each line. And sometimes you will have people from the client side, like the localization company or the dev team or something like that. The writers, sometimes they will be in the room to help you with context as well. So you're not just like guessing at it. You'll throw out a take, but the director will maybe say, okay, let's try it more like this or whatever.
You're right there. Yep.
Hi, thanks for showing up. Great panel. Quick question. Practice. You mentioned practice is very important. Do you find opportunities in your day-to-day just speaking to people or maybe doing a panel to practice your craft in your own voice?
That's an interesting question. I think most of my practice comes from when I am just kind of, not most of my like dedicated practice, but my everyday practice isn't when I'm talking to others. It's when I'm like playing a game or goofing off or like talking to myself as I do my chores, stuff like that. Driving, where I'm just like playing around with my voice and like if I notice that the way that this actor enunciates these certain words is really cool. How can I utilize a bit of that in my own performance? Always learning from other actors and just thinking about other actors' performances, and like theory and what different teachers have said, and just kind of using it to play around and have fun, because that's the best way, at least for me, to get it to stick in my mind, is to do it while having fun.
For me, it's almost always when I have an audition, because with voice acting, they send you the audition, and then you record it and send it back. And I really look at auditioning as part of our job. I have the good fortune of having a very busy agent, so I get auditions almost every day, which is great. I'm super grateful for that. And so I spend that time every single day honing that character, whatever I'm auditioning for, before I record it and send it off. And then of course in the car too. I mean, we're always messing around in the car. But unless I'm taking a class or in a sort of actor's workout group, it's almost always when I'm sent an audition, and then I set aside a few hours of the day to just really work on that.
Yes, my practice is also exactly what you were going to say, like auditions and being on the job. But I'm sure people are wondering, well, how am I supposed to practice if I'm not getting auditions? So there are a few things you can do. One of them is to practice reading out loud. I always tell people to do this because voice acting most of the time is cold reading. It's not like a play or a film where you get the script in advance and you can, really like look through your character and all that. Like you have to make quick decisions, which is one of the reasons that being a trained actor is very important. Because in like acting class or whatever, you learn how to break down a character, and then that way you can do that quickly when you're actually working. But auditions are a great chance as well to practice like breaking down a character and figuring out what choices that you want to make. So one thing that I advise people, because this is how I get started, is audition for things for practice online, like small projects, indie projects, student films, independent animators, stuff like that, because a lot of them will just post auditions on the internet. There's a couple places you can look, or a few places actually. Twitter, of course, is a big one. There are a lot of people who post there just saying like, hey, I'm making a small project, I need people to help. There's, of course, I'm biased because I founded this site, but